It's been a few years since we had this talk here on the channel, and in that time, well, we've had some pretty significant new releases that have shaken up my official recommended Tolkien reading order. Whether you're looking into Middle-earth for the very first time, or you've been a fan since the Ainulindale, you're in the right place. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss great weekly Tolkien nerdery here on Nerd of the Rings. Without further ado, let's get to my newly updated Tolkien reading order. Number 1. The Hobbit. In what is likely a surprise to no one, my starting point is where the world met Middle-earth for the first time, 1937's The Hobbit. The classic children's book is the perfect introduction for those excited to take the journey, as well as for those who are a bit intimidated to dive into this world of deep mythology. Despite having gone on to read Tolkien's more challenging works, The Hobbit remains one of my absolute favorite books. Bilbo is one of my all-time favorite characters in this book in particular, and his journey is a wondrous one to go on. And if you want to check out how this book was in its original published form, prior to Tolkien changing scenes with Gollum to better align with the sequel, you can check out a facsimile first edition, or the annotated Hobbit by Douglas A. Anderson, which gives some really great insight into the book. Number 2. The Lord of the Rings. Next up is the masterpiece itself, The Lord of the Rings. What can I say about this epic masterwork that hasn't been said countless times before? It's the definitive work of fantasy, and was even named Book of the Millennium in multiple surveys at the turn of the century. And that popularity has only grown since Peter Jackson's trilogy that would release just a year later. Whatever accolades this book has received, it deserves them and then some. And while it is truly unparalleled, in many ways, it is but the tip of the Middle-earth iceberg, for its story and its characters are the culmination of ages of tales and events that would come before it. Number 3. The Children of Hurin. Here is where my list often diverges from other recommendations readers may receive. Rather than proceed into arguably the most challenging of the early list in the Silmarillion, I highly suggest making your third read The Children of Hurin. It's roughly the same length as The Hobbit, but lies somewhere between The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion in terms of reading level. The book follows the story of Turin Turambar, one of the most tragic of Tolkien's characters and an ancient relative of Aragorn. Not only does it open with a pivotal First Age battle, the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, but it also features not one, but two of Tolkien's greatest villains. Morgoth, the original Dark Lord, and Glaurung, the malicious father of the dragons. What's really great and unique about The Children of Hurin is that it's a single narrative tale. Many of the following titles feature collections of tales, multiple versions of the same tale, or summaries of ancient histories. The Children of Hurin follows this one family, with a heavy focus on Turin, through all his triumphs and tragedies. This tale, which is one of my absolute favorite books, provides an amazing look into the lives of people in a world where Morgoth's influence can be felt throughout the land. It also served as one of the main inspirations for this channel, as I had always wondered about these locations Turin is said to have traveled to. The Children of Hurin being similar in reading level to The Lord of the Rings, while also featuring a bit more arcane language, makes for a perfect bridge between Tolkien's masterpiece and the project of his passion, the next book on the list. Number 4. The Silmarillion. It's the big one, the crusher of dreams, the book that many have attempted and, well, many have finished it, but a lot of folks have attempted to finish it and not. So let's talk about it. The Silmarillion is a collection of stories from throughout the history of Middle-earth. There's a large focus on the earliest days, including the creation of the world by Eru Ilúvatar and the deeds of the Valar. We then get a great core of the book chronicling the struggle of elves and men against Morgoth throughout the First Age. And finally, we get smaller sections giving us glimpses at the Fall of Númenor, the Rings of Power, and the Third Age. This book marks the first of Christopher Tolkien's Herculean effort to see his father's remaining stories published, and can certainly be a more challenging read than the previous entries on this list. It's more biblical in both scale and language, has a great cast of characters in both size and quality, compelling stories, and is well worth taking the time to read. Personally, I found listening to the audiobook to be tremendously helpful in my first successful read-through, so I'd highly recommend that method if it proves challenging to keep everything straight. There are now 2 audiobook versions to choose from: Martin Shaw's grandiose biblical-feeling rendition and the more recent Andy Serkis performance full of his incredible acting prowess. Within the Silmarillion, we have a shorter account of the tale of the Children of Hurin, as well as shorter accounts of a couple books we'll get to later. It connects in a multitude of ways to the characters, events, and artifacts we see in The Lord of the Rings. So if you've ever wanted to read for yourself about the significance of Galadriel's gift of 3 strands of her hair to Gimli, or Aragorn's Ring of Barahir and its connection to Galadriel's brother, or the first location to bear the name Minas Tirith in an entirely different part of the world, the Silmarillion is the place to go. Number 5, The Fall of Númenor. Next, we have the first new entry to shake up my previous reading order. This may be another point of contention for some, but I think I've got a solid reasoning for placing The Fall of Númenor at number 5. While the Silmarillion has a heavy focus on the First Age, The Fall of Númenor is all about the Second Age. This book was just released in 2022 and was edited by the wonderful Bryan Sibley. Prior to this book, if you wish to get a complete picture of Tolkien's Second Age, it would require scattered reading across a dozen different books. What Sibley has masterfully done is taken these tales of things like Anatar and the Rings of Power, Aldarion and Erendis, the titular Fall of Númenor, and the Last Alliance of Elves and Men, and not only assembled them, but placed them in Middle-earth chronological order, making it so much easier to follow the grand story of Sauron's deception and evil, and the elves and men who stand against him. It's also worth noting that while fairly minimal, this will be the first book in this reading order that features commentary between sections of Tolkien's writings. Whether it's Bryan Sibley, Carl Hostetter, or in the vast majority of cases, Christopher Tolkien, these pieces of commentary give insight into J.R.R. Tolkien's writing process and help make connections between stories. Number 6, Unfinished Tales of Númenor and Middle-earth. Now that we've taken deep dives into the First and Second Ages with the previous 2 books, we're going to dive even deeper with our number 6, commonly referred to simply as Unfinished Tales. Now, it's worth noting that this and other books we are about to cover do have some double dipping on stories. One of the sources Fall of Númenor pulls from is indeed Unfinished Tales. However, even if you're skipping over the chapters on things like Aldarion and Erendis, we find some truly great stories from Tolkien's lore. One of the most noteworthy is the history of Galadriel and Celeborn, giving us some great background info on the future Lord and Lady of Lothlorien. We also get an entire chapter about the Astari, or wizards, where we learn much of their history and mission. A section on the Palantiri, the seeing stones that become so pivotal in The Lord of the Rings. The Hunt for the Ring chronicles the movements of the Nazgul as they search for Bilbo and the Shire. The Quest of Erebor is set after the Return of the King, where we find Gandalf talking to the other Fellowship members and recounting how he came to orchestrate the mission to overthrow Smaug, and Bilbo's involvement in it. Number 7, The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. I've changed my reading order just a bit once more here, as I think this is an excellent time to take on a bit of lighter reading before truly getting into the deep end of the Tolkien pool. The Adventures of Tom Bombadil is a collection of poetry that is canon to Middle-earth. The preface of this book says that these are translated from the Red Book of Westmarch. the in-world book which contained the tales of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Not only do we get multiple poems featuring Tom Bombadil himself, but we get others focusing on things like trolls, Oliphants, and the mysterious Mulips. We also get a pair of poems about the Man in the Moon. A portion of one of these poems is recited by Frodo Baggins at the Prancing Pony before he falls off the table and slips on the One Ring. For movie fans, part of this poem was recited by Beaufort in Rivendell in the first Hobbit film. The Adventures of Tom Bombadil is a great light read to fit anywhere in this reading order, and may give you a sense of whether you'd enjoy the newest and one of the biggest Tolkien collections we'll talk about later on. Number 8. Beren and Luthien. The next two books on this list contain Tolkien stories in a unique format, which takes the analytical nature of unfinished tales a step further. Rather than a collection of different stories like the Silmarillion or Unfinished Tales, Beren and Luthien contains a single tale in various forms from throughout Tolkien's years of writing the story. In this way, we not only get the latest and most complete version of the story, but also get an inside look into the creative process as the story, characters, and events were changed to varying degrees over the years. Among the various versions of the tale are ones written in prose and verse. As for the story itself, it is the love story from Tolkien's world. So integral to J.R.R. Tolkien is this story that the characters' very names are engraved upon the tombstone of the author and his beloved wife, Edith. Number 9. The Fall of Gondolin. It's one of the most tragic and important tales of the First Age. It marks the moment when Morgoth takes control of Beleriand by eliminating his only true remaining threat. The tale involves Glorfindel, who we meet at the Council of Elrond, as well as Elrond's father and grandparents. An epic tale of one of the greatest cities of all time, its fall sets off the chain of events leading to the War of Wrath. This is a tale of betrayal, love, and a battle for survival against the dark force of orcs, dragons, and balrogs. Again, like Beren and Luthien, the Fall of Gondolin presents various versions of this tale as it evolved through Tolkien's attempts at writing it. Just as in the previous entry, we also have Christopher Tolkien as our guide through this portion of Middle-earth, giving us insight into his father's world as only he could. Number 10. The History of Middle-earth. Now we truly get to the deep end of the pool. The 12-volume History of Middle-earth set, published over the course of 13 years, is a work like no other, where Christopher Tolkien presents and discusses manuscripts written by his father. If you've watched this channel for any length of time, you've probably heard me reference individual titles in this series many times, such as Morgoth's Ring, The Peoples of Middle-earth, The Lost Road, The Book of Lost Tales. The list goes on. Each volume is unique, and all of them give insight into different elements of Middle-earth. Within the pages of these 12 volumes, we get a lot of previously unpublished material, as well as earlier versions of published material, giving us unique and unparalleled insight into the creative genius of J.R.R. Tolkien. It's impossible to overstate how amazing of an achievement Christopher Tolkien's work was bringing his father's work to the world. Without him, this reading order would consist only of The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. Christopher's work is one of incredible importance to Middle-earth fans and a masterwork of literary achievement from the world's first Tolkien scholar. Number 11. The Nature of Middle-earth. In the same vein as the History of Middle-earth, we have 2021's The Nature of Middle-earth, edited by Carl Hostetter. While not officially part of the History of Middle-earth, it is in most people's minds a 13th volume of that series. At the time of its release, I hypothesized it could be the last release of unpublished writings, and thankfully I was quite wrong, as we'll see very soon. The name of this book is derived from two meanings of its title, nature being both metaphysical and natural or historical. Among other things, we learn more about the lands, plants, and animals of Númenor, elvish life cycles, fate and free will, and much more. This is another one I've referenced a fair amount on my channel, and it fits perfectly alongside the History of Middle-earth series. Number 12, The History of the Hobbit. For our last of what you might call scholarly-oriented volumes, we return to the book that started it all. Much like Christopher with the History of Middle-earth series, John D. Ratliff gives us a deep dive into The Hobbit, informing us of the various revisions Tolkien made to the tale, and it has one of my personal favorite items across these volumes, the abandoned rewrite of The Hobbit from 1960. In the wake of the success of The Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien started to go back and rewrite The Hobbit to better fit stylistically with his new epic. Ultimately, he would abandon the attempt just prior to Thorin's company reaching Rivendell. But seeing those chapters here is a fascinating piece of Tolkien history. Number 13, The Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, Revised and Expanded Edition. Here with our 13th entry on the list and 24th book, we get our first look that isn't 100% about Middle-earth. The Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien is another incredible book for any Tolkien fan. Originally published in 1981, it's edited by Tolkien biographer Humphrey Carpenter with the assistance of Christopher Tolkien. While The Letters of Tolkien is no stranger to reading lists, in late 2023 we got a revised and expanded version of this book, which is simply an incredible development. This expanded edition included over 150 letters that were cut from the original publication to save on the page count, making it a worthy upgrade for fans. There are, of course, a lot of letters from Tolkien here that talk about and answer questions regarding Middle-earth. Some of the most common theories or questions regarding characters and events are directly addressed by the author himself. Beyond Middle-earth, we also see letters of a personal nature, as a husband and father, as a professor, and as an author working with publishers to get his works to print. They make for incredible glimpses into the author and the man. Number 14, The Collected Poems of J.R.R. Tolkien. Finally, we have the most recent item on the entire list. If you enjoyed the look into Tolkien's poetry in The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, this is a volume you will adore. The Collected Poems of J.R.R. Tolkien is a 3-volume set spanning over 1,600 pages. Edited by the incredible Tolkien scholars Hammond and Scull, the set includes over 240 poems written by the professor, including over 75 works never before published. Among these works of poetry are some real gems that give us never-before-seen Middle-earth lore, like the multiple versions of Scatha the Worm, telling of the famed dragon from the middle of the Third Age. While this concludes what I'm looking at as the main body of Tolkien's books, it's far from the end for those who wish to further immerse themselves in the writings of Tolkien or even writings about Tolkien. I won't go into great detail on each one, but I wanted to give honorable mentions to these books, and we'll include them in the master list in the description for you to check out. There are a myriad of wonderful books about Tolkien from people like Hammond and Scull, who also wrote The Lord of the Rings Reader's Companion, the pair of iconic books by Tom Shippey, The Road to Middle-earth and J.R.R. Tolkien Author of the Century. There's also Humphrey Carpenter's biography of Tolkien and John Garth's Tolkien and the Great War. For those who wish to travel with the professor beyond the borders of Middle-earth, you can dive into his works like Tales from the Perilous Realm, which features some of his most beloved works outside his magnum opus. And Tolkien also worked on his own translations of some of the tales that inspired him. These ancient epics include things like Beowulf, Sigurd and Gudrun, Finn and Hengist, The Fall of Arthur, The Story of Cuervo, and The Battle of Maldon. And if you just want another way of basking in Tolkien's works, especially that of Middle-earth, there's a great number of books that are all about Tolkien's art and exhibits featuring both his art and writings. These include things like Maker of Middle-earth, Art of the Manuscript, and a couple more Hammond and Scull entries in The Art of the Hobbit and The Art of the Lord of the Rings. No matter where you start and no matter how far you wish to travel in the world of J.R.R. Tolkien, I truly hope it's a journey you take. I say it all the time, but the world of Middle-earth is nothing less than the greatest fantasy world ever created. And for those who dive into Tolkien's writings, there's a rich world of some of the most breathtaking locations, incredible characters, great themes, and epic tales well worth your time. Happy reading, and thank you for watching here on Nerd of the Rings. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, CCDC Red Team, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Z and N, Evely, Kia, Freya Firestar, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.